Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host, along with my sidekick Beatrice. So we're in Sydney, Ohio, on our way down to Georgia. Dropped our load at Costco this morning, and that actually went pretty well. I got a door. If you ever been to Costco, you know how that goes. But I got a door like right at the when I checked in, so I just went straight to the door and just worked out great. I was done in about a little over an hour, so that was pretty cool. And then we picked up a load in Adrian, Michigan, and that load is going to, like I said, Georgia, to the Kia plant down there, the Kia assembly plant. But it is a refrigerated load, or temperature controlled. It's not too cold. So we were in southeast Michigan today, and there was a couple of things that I thought were cool that I wanted to share with you. So the first thing is there's a place called the River Raisin National Battlefield Park, and River Raisin is basically an amalgamation of the English word river and raisin, which is, the French had named this river the river of, or the river with grapes, so Riviera Raisin, and raisin is the French word for grapes. By the way, the French word for raisin is raisin sec, dry grapes. And so the battles there were actually a series of battles, and this was during the War of 1812. It was actually, there was a lot that went on in the War of 1812. I feel like most Americans know about one thing, and that is Francis Scott Key writing the Declaration, writing the Star Spangled Banner, after watching the British shell Fort McHenry in Baltimore. But a lot of stuff happened on the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, especially a lot of stuff happened up in this northwestern territories, this Western Reserve. And what these battles were, basically the Americans had pushed up and through Detroit and actually invaded southern Ontario in 1812 as part of the war, but they weren't able to hold their positions, and they kind of retreated. Well, the River Raisin, like I said, runs through southeastern Michigan and empties into Lake Erie. And so they backed up from Detroit down to what was then referred to as the Rapids on the Maumee, or words to that effect, which is present-day Toledo. Toledo, of course, is on the Maumee River. And there were two battles, the first and second battle of River Raisin in January of 1813. Then there was another battle later that year, Battle of the Thames. And what happened was that the Americans lost the first two, but eventually regained their footing. The second battle, though, involved what was termed an Indian massacre, because the British allies were Native American tribes. And a lot of what happened was kind of blown out of proportion. I mean, there were certainly deaths, there was certainly property damage, people were forced out of their homes, buildings were burned down. Nothing terribly uncommon for that time and in that kind of warfare. I mean, things were pretty brutal on the frontier over the years. And Bernard Bailyn, before his death, wrote a book about the pioneer time before the revolution. He was like a early American historian, but he wrote a book, and I apologize, I can't remember the name, but he basically talks about, from Jump Street, from when Jamestown was settled to, all the way through the time up to the Revolution. There were, depredations on both sides, but this River Raisin battle, which became the River Raisin Massacre, and in fact coined the term "Remember the Raisin," that was kind of the impetus, but also the pretext to adopt policies of basically driving Native Americans out of all lands east of the Mississippi. Now, of course, that was just the start, as we know. But that's kind of the significance of these battles. Like tactically, strategically, they weren't a big thing in the whole war. But they really fomented public opinion against Native peoples. And of course, it's kind of like they sided with the wrong side. If they had been fighting alongside the Americans, it might have had a different outcome, but they didn't. And, for what it's worth, it made sense for the natives to side with the British. They liked things better when the British were kind of controlling things. So, and same as in the French and Indian War, they sided with the French because they liked things better when the French were controlling areas. So it made sense for them. It didn't work out, though. So we kind of know how that went. And that kind of leads me to the next thing. I was in Monroe County, and there's a concentric Monroe, right? The town of Monroe inside the county of Monroe in southeast Michigan. And Monroe had a guy that would end up being very famous, was raised there. And I'm talking about George Armstrong Custer. So Custer was born down in Ohio, but ended up as, basically completing most of his childhood in Michigan. And there are several things in Michigan named after him, including towns and an army post. And there's a big statue of him on a horse in Monroe. But Monroe was where he kind of became the guy that we know him to be. And keep in mind that at Bighorn, at the Battle of Little Bighorn, at death, he was only 36 years old. So he wasn't an old man. But he became famous during, apologize for the glare. He became famous during the Civil War, and in part it was because of things he learned and things he became when he was a young man in Monroe, Michigan. He was an excellent horseman. He had a lot of charisma, a lot of leadership. Now, he actually graduated from college and then went to West Point. He graduated from a teacher's college, went to West Point. He was in the class of 1861, and he would have been there for 5 years of study, which would have ended in 1862, but he was graduated early, along with 33 other classmates. Now, and because of the Civil War starting. The interesting thing is that Custer finished dead last in his class. He was 34 of 34. I will say that 22 of his classmates resigned before graduation to go be in the Confederate military. And, normally he'd have been just like sent to some outpost out in the frontier because he was the lowest man in his class. But they needed army officers. And he ingratiated himself with senior officers, including George McClellan, and his rise was pretty meteoric. But it wasn't without merit. on the battlefield, he was the consummate leader. He was especially brave. He led from the front. He was a superb cavalryman, a superb horse handler, and people believed in the guy. And he had good tactical sense too. He didn't panic when things went south. He acquitted him, and he basically was at every major engagement that the Army of the Potomac fought from the beginning of the war all the way to the surrender at Appomattox. And he was so well regarded by his superiors that he was given the table that Lee signed the Articles of Surrender on. That table was given to him by Philip Sheridan, who was the commander of all the Union cavalry forces and would later be his commander, but he was alongside of very senior officers, and he was a brevet major general, and he was the youngest general breveted in the Union Army, when he was 23 years old. So here's a guy that graduates from West Point. He's a second lieutenant. Next thing you know, he's leading a cavalry division. Why? Because he was very competent. He was very good. So, and I won't get into Bighorn and all that other stuff. He's got kind of a mixed legacy. But he certainly was involved in the continuation of the policies that started because of River Raisin, in the manifest destiny that was carried on. So anyway, little brief history of southeastern Michigan. So I wanted to talk. It's kind of funny. Yesterday I met somebody who works for GP Transco, and he and I have a fair amount in common. He's also was career Navy, and he just started at GP Transco. And we were talking about trucking companies and stuff. And one thing he mentioned, and he and I were kind of comparing notes. Well, he was with a company, and I won't name the company, but he was with a company for 7 years, and he was still only earning 45 cents a mile. And when they found out he was going to leave, they offered him 50 cents a mile, and a newer truck. Not new, but newer. And my response to him was, I said, that's really disrespectful. I said, because, they're not even paying market at 50% anymore. Or, excuse me, 50 cents a mile. They're not even paying market anymore. Like, that's kind of an insult. And that's their way of saying, well, we really weren't going to give you a newer truck and a pay raise until we found out you were leaving. Like, trucking companies are more than willing to let you just stew in your own juices. And I've had a few people criticize me for having changed jobs and pursued being very mercenary about it. But that's the only way to advance yourself, right? A lot of times you just gotta go, because that company apparently has enough drivers at 45 cents a mile. Why would they pay 60 cents a mile? They don't even want to pay 60 cents a mile to keep a guy, right? Let alone people that aren't trying to leave. But it got me thinking about recruiting and the things that recruiters say and the things that you see in advertisements. And I wanted to kind of point out some, glaring discrepancies or just things that bug me about trucking company, recruiting and stuff. Because I feel like their recruiting, their advertisement, what they say they give you, is their way of saying, just like with this guy, was his company's way of saying, we kind of think you're stupid. I really do think a lot of trucking companies think drivers, like across the board, are just dunces. Like, we could, all we could do is fog a mirror and hold on to a steering wheel, right? Like we can't think independently or critically about anything. You know, we're just like, we just know what we're supposed to do. And you see that in some of the responses. Like I did a video about our safety department. You see that, right? You see the condescension. It is disrespectful, but a lot of times it's not couched like that. It's couched like, well, you know, we really know better than you. Like there'll be some, you know, there'll be some chucklehead that graduated from college a week and a half ago, and they're on the phone with you, and they act like they know what the hell's going on. You know, they can't even find their car in the parking lot. You know, but we take it sometimes, and a lot of drivers don't ask the right questions, and especially when they're in the recruiting process. And here are some things. I just kind of made a list in my mind of things that you see, and you're like, wait, why is that even like some kind of thing they want to highlight? Because what I'm about to say, most of this stuff is industry standard, right? Like here's an example. They say, we pay you for loaded and unloaded miles. And my response to that is, okay, well, why wouldn't you pay me for unloaded miles? Do you not want me to drive safely? Is it okay if when I run unloaded miles that I just, you know, run over people in crosswalks? I mean, driving a truck is driving a truck is driving a truck. It doesn't matter if I got 40,000 pounds in the box or 0. It doesn't matter if I'm, you know, got a trailer on my back or I'm bobtail. It doesn't even matter if I'm driving down the road or I'm parked right here in a truck stop. I still am a professional, and I have certain responsibilities that come with being a professional. And so I should get compensated when I'm driving, especially when I'm driving, because that's why you hired me, because I have a certain type of license that not everybody has. Okay, that's the first one. More home time. Let me say this, my friends. When I started out in this industry, so I was like low man on the totem pole. I was making 36 cents a mile at night transportation. Even then, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that if I said I wanted to be home on a certain day, and I think I've said this before, but if I said I want to be home on the 21st of the month, if I wasn't home on the 21st of the month, there's going to be hell to pay. And I don't care if some DM or some fleet manager's like, yeah, well, so we basically do a day home for every week that you're out. If I'm out for 4 weeks and I want to be home 5 days, then you better be damn certain that that's what's going to happen. Okay? Why? Because I have a CDLA, I have some endorsements, I don't put trucks in the ditch, I don't get tickets, I don't kill people. So I have a job. And if you can't get me home and by the way, I run pretty hard. I stay out for quite a while. But so I've never given, I don't ask when I can go home. I tell them this is when I'm going to be home. So the idea that a trucking company's like, oh, we'll give you more home time. No, you'll give me the home time I want. You know, that's just how it is. And if you're not in that situation, if you're working for a company where, and I've had this happen. Like I had a company, I was supposed to be home, and it was Father's Day actually. And, you know, I wanted to be home for Father's Day, not for me, but because my kids like me being home on Father's Day. And yeah, they didn't get me home. So it wasn't very, Father's Day's in June, I was gone in July. I was done at that company by the end of July. It just, you know, I just had to get some stuff lined up, and it didn't take long. One of the other things is, you know, loads and miles. If you're sitting around in this environment, then you got a crappy company. Okay, they don't have enough business because there's loads that don't get carried that people are desperate to have carried. So if your company can't manage to keep you going as hard as you want to, you know, and the fact that they, you know, advertise that, I'm like, well, what else would you be doing? Right? Like, you're saying that like it's some selling point to me for your company, for me to go to your company. What else would you be doing? You're a trucking company. 401k. Ooh. The fact that somebody mentions that as like a selling point, it's like, first of all, having a 401k for your employees is a no-brainer. Because even if the company doesn't contribute to it, it's still a great way for somebody to save for their retirement. Okay? Now, when they say company retirement plan, that's bullshit, because it's not. It's not a defined benefit. It's a defined contribution plan. Okay? And if I'm happy to explain the difference of those if somebody wants to ask, but it's not a pension. It's not a retirement plan. It's because they act like it's like something that's exclusive to them. It's not. Also, 401k contributions, right? A lot of companies say that they do like a 50% contribution, but here's what they do. All they do is give you 50 cents on the dollar for some percentage. I have yet to see, because you can contribute substantial amounts of money into a 401k depending on the plan documents, like way more than you can into an IRA. Like, I think this year the limits are in the $20,000 range. If somebody says they have a 50% company contribution, then what I would say is, okay, if I put in 20 grand, are you going to put in 10 grand? And if the answer is, oh, no, we won't do that, then you don't have a 50% contribution. You might have 50% to some level, okay? But again, this is just some of their chicanery. They're double talking. They're saying stuff that they don't really deliver on, okay? What else? Oh yeah, we're family oriented. I've said this before. If it isn't your family's name on the door, then who cares? I mean, if you think about it for a second, that's kind of scary. How many people do you know have family members that are psychos, right? How many people do you know that have family members they won't even talk to? Okay? Don't treat me like family, treat me like a professional. I got a family to be treated like a family with. I don't need you. I need you to be professional. Okay? We treat drivers with respect. Like, who says that? That's like saying, oh, we have clean restrooms. I'm like, isn't that the most basic thing? It's like some state saying, hey, come vacation here because we have paved roads for you to drive on. It's so basic that I can't believe that companies think drivers are so stupid that they're like, ooh, that company will respect me. You know, it's just crazy how drivers are taken for granted. Okay? You know, and here's the thing about over the road. You're not going to get lots of miles, lots of home time, and lots of money all in the same package. Why? Because that's not how you run a trucking business, right? And they act like they got some secret sauce where you can get 60 cents a mile, 4,000 miles a week, and be home every weekend. Right? Like, it's impossible. Okay? So the companies, you know, like going back to GP Transco, I know for a fact you can make 80 a year at GP Transco, but you're going to have to run to do it. You're not going to be home 10 days a month and make 80 grand a year. If you want to be home 10 days a month, go to work for some company that has local or dedicated, you know. But true over the road, you know, you're not going to make any money doing that, right? You know, like I've always said, the secret to truck driving is driving a truck. So when you're looking at a new company or just even your own company, ask yourself, do these things, do they matter, or are these things so basic that anybody who doesn't do them is like, you know, running a prison camp? You know, I hope that people start really digging down and looking at these trucking companies and saying, you know, what's the best deal for me? Take a couple extra days if you're changing jobs. You know, demand respect. Demand to be treated like the professional that you are. So, you know, and we could debate different things, like, you know, like equipment. Here's and let me just say this real quick before I close. Don't be tricked by the shiny trinkets. Okay, you know what shiny trinkets are? They're shiny, cool trucks. You know, like there's, you know, if shiny, cool trucks were the be all end all, then TMC would be the best company in the world to run flatbeds for. I've never worked for TMC, but I kind of know what they pay and how they run their people, and it wouldn't be my cup of tea. Might be a great place to start, but it wouldn't be my cup of tea. You know, there's another company, Hurricane. They have this advertisement about how they do custom paint for all their drivers on these nice Peterbilts and stuff. And I'm like, who gives a shit? You know? I don't care. I mean, I don't care what color the truck is. If you're focused on that, then you should go to work at Disney World, you know, where everything's bright and shiny. But if you're a serious professional, you don't care whether it's a Peterbilt or a Kenworth or a Freightliner, Volvo, you know, whatever, right? All you care about is that it runs, and it runs well. You don't want to be in the shop. I don't care. You know, like I used to follow a guy on YouTube. He worked for a company that ran T680s, but he talked about his truck being in the shop all the time. I'm like, oh, that's a nice truck. But if it's not on the road, then it's just nice lawn furniture. So if you're looking for shiny, nice lawn furniture, go for it. But if you want to make money, the wheels got to be turning. So anyway, I share that with you. I just want to empower people, let you know that there is something for you, but you got to be discerning. You got to demand the respect. You got to demand the professionalism. It's a big thing for me, and I don't, you know, the next time I'm in Springfield, I guarantee somebody in safety department's going to meet me face to face, and it's not going to be a conversation that they'll enjoy, because I demand professionalism. They demand it from me, I demand it from them. And so I don't mean to sound angry or like I'm on a rant, but I kind of am on a rant. Anyway, it's good talking to you. Thanks for tuning in. We're almost to 360 subscribers, so that's very cool. Bee's happy. She's sleeping. Storms make her crazy, and we've been in storms past few days. So anyway, take care, be safe, and we'll catch you next time on Tim Travels. Bye.